want to sit down?
Not yet, no. I've got, no, leave them right now.
Okay, I'll put them in the chair.
I've got visual aids. I'm a good teacher. I'm an educator, you know. I believe in having visual aids. Okay. This is an old piece. It's been around for a long time. It's been around almost 15 years, I think, since I wrote it. And I've always wanted to read it again. So here I am. I'm going to read it to you again. It's called Christine's Watch. Originally, I wrote this piece about Christine Lassiter over 12 years ago. Back then, I was hearing impaired with an estimated 90% loss, and I had considerable difficulty in participating in activities such as plays, music, storytelling. At the time I wrote, I wore 2 hearing aids. They seemed to simply magnify my loss. First time I saw Christine, she was in a classroom in the old McKee building in Cullowhee with 24 Cherokee teenagers. I'd seen her from the hall, blonde, beautiful, filled with some kind of fierce energy. She moved swiftly about the room, reading. I asked one of the students in the back of the room, I said, "What's going on?" And she says, "Miss Lassiter is teaching us to write poetry." Christine was reading from a sheaf of poems all written by her students, proclaiming each line with enthusiastic delight, leaping and spinning around the room, pausing to say, "Isn't that beautiful?" The room was full of inspired, smiling poets. Inspired because Christine wrung every nuance from every word, making every line shimmer with musical cadence. I suspected that she could have made the grocery list sound like a Shakespearean sonnet. I was smitten. I'm going to need my glasses. I faked it there for a while. In the weeks following that poetry reading, I found Christine everywhere. I discovered that in addition to teaching classes in Cherokee, she acted in productions in Asheville's Green Door Theater and was a member of a drama group called the Playback Theater, and that she worked with the homeless people in Asheville and had participated in a series of poetry slams funded by a small cultural grant. She drove an old camper with a sleeping bag in the back, and she often slept in campgrounds at night. After we became friends, she let me read her play. It was called Only the Dance. It was about the homeless in Asheville. She cast the play from street people. She also wrote poetry. She had a newspaper column. When she came to see me in Sylva, it was always a brief stop on her way to a class, a rehearsal, a meeting, or a workshop. She was always in a hurry. "I gotta go," she'd say, checking her watch. "I'm already late." "You just got here." "Well, what can I do? I got 30 students waiting for me in Cherokee, and then I have a workshop in Black Mountain tonight." I came to hate that watch. We ate in restaurants, we attended theater productions, or read each other's scripts, but that watch was ticking. Was never enough time. I frequently became angry, and I would swell up and pout. "I'm sorry," she would say, "but I got to do this stuff." "Why?" She would tell me how important it was to teach the classes, volunteer to work with minorities, the homeless, the aged. It's just something I got to do. After 2 years of watching her drive away, I asked her one night to promise me that she would come at some future day and she'd not wear that watch. She said. She had a totally fake laugh, but it was really her laugh. She laughed like somebody saying the words. Ha, ha, ha. That's the way she laughed. Okay, I promise. I thought she meant it. Once on a nature trail over outside University of North Carolina in Asheville, I asked her, have you ever been married? Oh, yes, she said. He's dead now. She told me about the suicide. She always answered questions with a disarming, straightforward honesty. I'd read some books about survivors of suicide victims, of guilt that was felt as a need to do penance. I asked her if she was looking for forgiveness with all this desperate activity she was doing. Perhaps, she said. That was a special day. It was a spring afternoon. We had eaten one of her organic picnics. We gathered up the litter and we put it in a bin. The sun was in her hair and I got up on my nerve. Now this is high passion with us. You got that? Mm-hmm. I touched her nose. She had a slightly deviated septum. And she smiled at me, and then she looked at her watch. It was at that time a Mickey Mouse watch, and she said, time to go. And she says, Big A, we're going to talk. We'll talk for days. We'll have all the time in the world. I would like to think she was serious. She started leaving her plays with me. She took me to poetry readings at Pack Square, places I'd never been. I heard Jonathan Williams, and she wrote his poems down in a notebook as they were read so I could read them. She took me to Hart Theater and to a theater in Boone. She whispered dialogue in my ear so loud I could hear it. She attended a production of my play and told me all the comments, which were positive. And then she overheard in the audience. She even went to the Unitarian Church in Franklin with me and told me afterwards, you should come here more often. Those people really like you. You're lucky to have such good friends. Christine had a genuine desire to make others feel good about themselves. And of course then she said, gotta go. And she was gone. She stopped coming for a while. We talked by email. She complained of headaches and exhaustion. She took a teaching position in Boone and commuted from Asheville. Her email messages began to be confusing, filled with run-on sentences, misspelled words. And then the messages stopped. And then I only heard by accident that she was in St. Joseph's over in Asheville. And I went to see her in this hospital in a foreign country, which was what Asheville was to me. She assured me that she was just tired. She made vague references to some surgery, but she was fine. And her room was filled with her friends, and they were all singing and chanting happy songs, and I hated it. All the songs were about sunshine. However, as I was leaving, a nurse took my arm, whispered to me, Mr. Carden, there were tumors in her brain. They were like clusters of grapes. A week went by and I sent her DVDs and books. And then she called me. She said She was always mindful of the fact that I couldn't hear. Can you hear me? I'll speak slowly and distinctly now. And I told her I could hear her fine, and she says, Gary, I'm going to die. For a moment I didn't know how to respond, but she said, we will have time now. And she went on to say that the doctors said there would be brief periods of good health. She said, I have to go to Florida for treatment. And there was a long silence, and then she said, Gary, I love you. It didn't matter, of course, those brief periods of good health, at least not for us. It didn't happen. The treatment didn't work, and after several months, Christine was brought back to Asheville, and when I went to see her, she could only talk in brief spurts, and for some 15 minutes we talked, and she used it to tell me how wonderful I was, how talented. She kept brushing my hair out of my eyes and moving her hands over my face as though she were memorizing it. And finally the nurse said, it's time to go, Christine, and they were taking her someplace for therapy. She patted my cheek, gotta go. And when I rose to leave, she added, everything's gonna be all right, Gary. It wasn't, but I see her everywhere. She loved all those little shops on Lexington Avenue. There was a photographer studio there where she had been a model, and her portrait was frequently in the window. I remember her at Storytelling Festival at the Folk Arts Center. When the audience would laugh, there was her laugh, which was ha, 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 very distinctive. Ha, ha, ha. She loved health food stores, theaters, dancing. She once danced with me on a rainy Sunday while Ray Charles sang Every Time We Say Goodbye. I remember her on my front porch at night listening to crickets. And the night she read her poetry at Malaprops, and then she read at Jubilee Hall. I remember that the homeless people came. And I remember when we walked down the street in Asheville, the homeless people would actually shout at her, Christine! Hey, Christine! There was no physical romance between Christine, despite all my secret hopes. But I loved her. I think she loved me too. I know that's true because Christine loved everyone. We all have her with us because she's in our hearts, and finally time has stopped. There is no watch now, and finally she's here to stay. I read this tribute to Christine at her funeral, which was held at Jubilee Hall on Wall Street. The place was packed with Christine's friends. The homeless and the aged was there. As I was leaving, Christine's sister approached me outside on the sidewalk. There was so much noise I couldn't understand a word she said, but she concluded by handing me Christine's watch. My friend John Quinnett was with me, and he said, you didn't hear a word, did you? And he told me what had happened, that Christine had been cremated that afternoon. And when they removed her watch at the mortuary, it stopped running, and so I have it now, hanging on a nail above my computer. It stopped at 5:15, February 13th, 2001. And I brought her picture, and I also have her watch that was hanging on the nail. And this is, if you would, just put it up here on this table. And leave it, yeah. I did an anthology of my plays once, and since nobody was going to publish me, I decided to publish myself, and so I paid for it. And there's the collection of my plays, and it's dedicated to Christine. Has her picture on that side. Question? Anybody want to ask me anything?
How do you read it now without crying?
Hmm?
How do you read it now without crying?
Without,
Tears?
well, I'm crying right now. You just can't tell it.
Me too.
He read out of the plumbing, that's how.
No, I never could read it. And I put it up, and that's why I never touched it for such a long time. But it's not a particularly good piece. I know that. Not well read. It seems like when something touches you personally, you lose a lot of your imagination sometimes. Question? Anybody of anything?
Where did she grow up?
Where did she what?
Grow up. Where was she from?
Where did she come from?
Yeah.
She was, she had a wealthy family in Florida, and she had sort of run away from home and came up to Asheville because they had all those clubs and everything that she was interested in, and she joined all those theater groups, and she did work with the homeless, and she lived with them when she worked with the homeless. She went to hospice, and that's why she was gone for so long, and that was, the last bit, if you know about that, with the cancer in your brain. And when it was obvious it was not doing any good, they brought her back. And the first time I went to see her after that, she was, she thought other people were in the room. And she'd say, "Gary, I want to tell you." And then she'd say, "Hush, I'll talk to you later." And there was no one there. There's no other people there, but yeah. Okay. I just want you to know that an old fart like me had one good thing happen to him. Yeah.